Hundreds of times during an athletic event, players are forced to make their bodies perform in ways that aren't required in the normal activities of daily life. Think about it. How many times has another person tried to knock you to the ground today? Sure, you use balance when you lean back in your chair to grab something off another desk in your office, or when you try to open your front door while holding a bag of groceries in either hand. But you still aren't using balance and body control to the same extreme of an athlete during competition. Athletes must be able to perform complicated tasks at high speeds while others are trying to disrupt their motions. Athletes that possess superior body control skills will be able to maintain the positioning that will give them the opportunity to make more big plays in a game. While basic body control can be developed through daily activities, athletic body control must be learned through specialized training. After all, you never know when that game-winning opportunity will come your child's way, and when it does, you want them to be under control enough to make the play.
The exercises we're about to demonstrate all focus on the development of athletic body control. These are the same drills and techniques that we use with our older, more experienced athletes, like guys that play football in the NFL. But today we're going to use some of our younger athletes from a variety of different sports. As you watch these exercises, you'll notice that most of them are relatively simple and can be performed anywhere. You'll also notice that, like most of the other drills on the Turbo Athletes video series, we've placed these drills into the form of a game or a contest. Athletes train to get better, but they also want to have fun when they train. We don't expect any athlete, whether it's an 11-year-old soccer player or a 5-year NBA veteran, to stick to any training routine if they're not enjoying it. We make it a high priority to make sure that all of the techniques we use are both productive and entertaining.
Here Rusty is working with Jake on a simple leg mimic exercise. The goal will be for Jake to perfectly mimic the movements Rusty makes with his leg. Jake will be disqualified if he touches his free leg to the ground or if he begins hopping around on his anchor leg. The time limit that we have placed on this drill is 20 seconds, so Rusty will have 20 seconds to make wild enough motions with his leg to force Jake to lose his balance. Like the other exercises in this section, the athlete will have to have great concentration to win this game. We could continue this drill by allowing the athlete to lead and putting our instructor in the mimic role. Especially with young athletes, it is a real asset when you can get the instructor to take part in the exercises as well. Young athletes typically love to get to compete against someone older than them, and if the athlete can actually win, then it's a great positive reinforcement that what they are doing is beneficial. One of the easiest ways to teach body control is to have athletes perform certain tasks with their eyes closed. Here we have our athletes stand on one leg. They are not allowed to touch their right and left legs together, and they must hold their arms away from their body. As soon as they are told to do so, they will close their eyes and balance while our instructor counts out loud to 10. The goal is for the athletes to stay in complete control and to avoid hopping on their anchor foot or touching their free leg to the ground. Both actions would lead to disqualification. While this seems to be very simple, you would be surprised how many athletes end up falling all over themselves by the count of 4. This drill combines concepts from the last two drills. Jake will stand on one leg with his eyes shut, while Rusty walks around him and lightly touches him on different parts of his body. Each time Rusty taps him, Jake must immediately tap the same spot. As with the last two drills, Jake will be disqualified if he hops on his anchor foot or touches his free leg to the ground. His goal is to mimic as many touches as possible. For an athlete to be successful with this drill, they must be able to perfectly concentrate on the task at hand. A lack of concentration will lead to an immediate loss of body control. The idea here is that we are training the athlete at a level higher than that which they will ever experience in a game. Obviously, you play sports with your eyes wide open. So if you can learn to perform certain tasks without the aid of vision, then performing these tasks in an actual game will seem relatively easy. Having an athlete close their eyes can increase the difficulty of any exercise. Here we have taken the common training task of frog leaps and have made Ruffin perform them with his eyes shut. Again, training without the aid of sight is a simple yet highly effective way to enhance skill development. And in order to continually challenge him, once Ruffin masters a single blind frog leap, we then have him perform a series of blind frog leaps. Rather than taking away a body-controlled aid such as sight, we can also introduce a new stimulus that is not normally present. Being demonstrated here is shove sprints. Here, Ruffin has been instructed to run about 3/4 speed and to follow the line of the ground as closely as possible at all times. As he runs, I run beside him and shove his shoulders in an attempt to knock him off the line. As Ruffin gets shoved off the line, it is his job to immediately make the adjustments needed to get back on the line. Imagine a baseball or softball player that is trying to beat out an infield hit. Clearly, the quickest way to get to first base is to run there in a straight line from home plate. Any deviation from this path will cause the hitter to run just a little further than necessary and will decrease their chances of beating out the throw. Drills such as this one will help athletes develop the skill to control their bodies to move in the correct pathways without having to stop and think about it. Almost identical to the last drill is the backward shove sprint. This is performed in the same manner except that the athlete must backpedal the pathway. This version of the exercise is much more difficult than the last and will likely be performed at slower speeds. A tool that we love using for many of our exercises, and especially for body control, are tennis balls. Making an athlete stand with a tennis ball under each foot creates some highly unstable footing. For an athlete to balance in a position where no part of their foot is touching the ground requires the body to fire hundreds of small muscles to constantly stabilize in one direction and then the other. Here we have placed Renice on tennis balls and given her a time limit of 10 seconds to quickly find her balance points. I should also point out that the age of the tennis balls being used will affect the level of difficulty of this drill. Old, used tennis balls are normally softer and easier to stand on, while new tennis balls are harder and create a less stable base. Once you've tried this exercise a few times, you will fully appreciate what a great job Renice is doing in this demonstration. Trust me, it's much harder than she's making it look. As athletes get better at balancing on the tennis balls, you can have them perform different tasks. Here we're asking Renice to squat as low as she can while retaining balance on the balls. After she has held the squat for a second or two, she stands to a full upright position and then repeats. All this extra motion makes staying firmly planted on the balls more difficult. To make the drill even harder, you can use the technique we used earlier by having the athlete close their eyes. As mentioned before, during competition, athletes are required to perform many tasks at high speeds while others are disrupting their motions. This drill is excellent for preparing an athlete for such conditions. Here we again place Renice on 2 tennis balls and ask her to balance without touching her feet to the ground. We then place our instructor in front of Renice and arm him with about a dozen tennis balls. As soon as Renice is ready, the instructor begins tossing the tennis balls. Renice must stay balanced, catch the balls, and then toss them to the side. Once the athlete has mastered this version of the exercise, we then put the instructor in motion. The instructor simply walks in circles around the athlete and tosses the tennis balls from all angles. The athlete must locate the balls, often out of their peripheral vision, make the catch, and balance. The exercise is over when the athlete falls off the tennis balls or the instructor runs out of balls to throw. The goal is for the athlete to catch as many of the balls being thrown to them as possible. The instructor will count out loud as each catch is made. This drill is a lot of fun and requires supreme body control on the part of the athlete. Another training tool we like to use for body control is known as an agility disc. The agility disc is used much the same way as the tennis ball, except that it gives the athlete a larger area on which to place their foot, and it creates the possibility for several new drills. The agility disc is basically a round platform with a place to secure a tennis ball on the bottom. By using the agility disc, we can begin drills by having our athletes hop onto an unstable surface. We don't recommend doing this drill with only the tennis balls because landing on their small surface area makes twisting an ankle much too easy. With the disc, we can simply have our athletes hop on and see how quickly they can overcome the forward momentum of their jump and gain control of their balance. One of the most athletic plays in sports is when an athlete is sprinting towards the sideline trying to save a ball from going out of bounds. We recreate this situation in the game being shown here. I've placed Jake and Dalton about 4 yards from a line on the ground. They will sprint towards the line, and I will lob a ball towards the out-of-bounds area. It is their job to either catch the ball without stepping out of bounds, or jump into the air, catch the ball, and throw it back to me before their feet hit the ground. To be successful in this game, athletes must execute some fairly complicated tasks. The athletes must be fast enough to get from their starting position to the ball before it hits the ground. and they must make a quick decision during their sprint as to how they're going to retrieve the ball. Are they going to slam on the brakes, stay in bounds, and try to catch the ball? Or are they going to continue sprinting and picking up speed, leap out and catch the ball and throw it back to me? While athletes simply enjoy the challenge of this game, their bodies are being conditioned to maneuver in a complicated situation. When we have 2 or more athletes, as we do here, we keep score. The athletes are awarded 2 points for keeping their feet in bounds and 1 point for making a save. The first person to 10 wins. Yet another great training technique for body control is to have an athlete perform tasks while they're dizzy. The simplest form of this technique is to have your athletes spin around in a circle as fast as they can about 10 times. It is best if you stand behind them just to make sure they don't go flying out of control like Alex Ann is doing here. Once they have finished spinning, you will hold their shoulders and point them in the direction you want them to run. The athlete will now sprint about 10 yards and attempt to stay perfectly centered on a line marking the pathway. Young athletes absolutely love this drill. Here again, if you have more than one athlete, as we do here, this is a great opportunity to have athletes race against each other. The dizziness often acts as an equalizer between 2 athletes of different speeds. In other words, sometimes slower athletes are able to win the race simply because they have learned to control their bodies better in this disrupted state. The next step in the progression of spinning drills is to have the athletes spin and sprint as before, but then to throw a ball to them in the middle of the sprint. To accomplish this task, an athlete must be able to control their body enough to sprint a straight line after spinning, and then be able to pick out an object that is quickly moving toward them out of a background that is spinning 100 miles an hour, then summon enough eye-hand coordination to actually catch the object. This is incredibly hard, but it's also a lot of fun. You will notice that we start Sean out by using a ball that is soft and relatively large. Using a ball that is made of a soft material will prevent him from getting injured if he happens to take a couple throws right off his face. Using a ball that is large and preferably brightly colored will make it much easier for Sean to locate the ball in the air as it is being thrown to him. As he gets better at this drill, we will begin substituting balls that are smaller or balls from his particular sports such as baseball or football. The final spinning drill we will demonstrate is the spin, sprint, and plant. Here we have set up a red, blue, and yellow cone about 5 yards apart in a triangle and placed a red, blue, and yellow ball in the center of the triangle. We have then placed Sean about 5 yards outside the triangle where he will spin around 10 times to get himself dizzy. Notice that we are again using Taboris as Sean's spotter. Once Sean is finished spinning, Taboris will aim him towards the 3 balls in the center of the triangle. Sean must be able to control himself and sprint towards the balls, pick them up, and then race around and place them next to their matching colored cone. While this drill may seem to be getting away from the realistic situations that occur on the field of play, in reality it happens all the time. Consider a football player that gets knocked around during a play and loses his sense of direction. During that split second, the player will either be unable to perform and will get tackled, or he will come up with a great play. In order to make that great play, the athlete must be able to recognize out of his peripheral vision the color of the jerseys around him, identify the jersey color as teammate or opponent, and then move in the appropriate direction, all while in a state of semi-mental clarity. If your young athlete is accustomed to playing games like this in the backyard, then when such a situation presents itself in a game, he or she will not be the athlete that gets tackled. Instead, they will be the athlete that makes the extraordinary play that brings the crowd to its feet.